Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. We recently watched the finale of The Bad Batch. We once again see the Kaminoan Scientist Nala Se, who was captured in a previous episode by Admiral Rampart as she was attempting to leave Kamino. The Empire apparently has some new plans for her scientific expertise, and they've brought her to a secret Imperial military base, potentially the one we saw Gregor escape from in an earlier episode. Nala Se is greeted by an Imperial scientist, one who has an interesting patch on her shoulder that we've seen on Kamino but also on another Imperial scientist. My question today is, what exactly does the Empire have in store for this very talented clone engineer? You see, most Kaminoans were relatively intelligent individuals. Some might also call them a bit ruthless and pragmatic as a species. But given their history of massive flood, starvation, and then the eventual culling of the weakest members of their society, can you blame them? Nala Se was smart for even a Kaminoan, which is why she became the chief medical scientist on Kamino. She actually has a long list of impressive achievements on her file. Not only was she a part of the team that first engineered the clone troopers from the Fett DNA, she was also the one who created the mutated clone Omega, along with her four brothers, the Bad Batch. Nala Se essentially was able to pick out desirable mutations in these specific clones' DNA and make them into very specialized killing machines. She was extremely gifted as a geneticist, and perhaps that's why the Sith chose her as their inside contact on Kamino. You see, the Sith were the ones who really ran the entire cloning operation. Their goal was to create a massive military force which they could one day use against the Republic and the Jedi. And so what they told the Kaminoan leadership was relatively limited because they were using a Jedi Master named Sifo-Dyas as a proxy buyer. And so most Kaminoans had no idea what the Sith were going to use the clone army really for. As a matter of fact, most Kaminoans didn't know that they were secretly working for the Sith. But it was necessary for the Sith to talk directly to some Kaminoan scientists so that they could actually execute the more nefarious parts of their plan, like the implanting of inhibitor chips which would force the clones to follow Order 66. The Sith wanted a ton of secrecy surrounding this plan, and so they only really communicated with Nala Se about this project. Nala Se would secretly design, manufacture, and then oversee the implanting of these chips into all of the clones' brains while they're still in their fetal stage. We don't know how exactly the chips work, but we've theorized that it creates and reinforces neural pathways that conditions the clones to kill their Jedi commanders. The point is, these chips are extremely complicated to make, and surprisingly, there are only a handful of malfunctions out of the millions that were actually installed. And most importantly, Nala Se did this all by herself without letting any other individual know. And so when Order 66 was activated and the inhibitor chips were set off, the Jedi and the Republic were caught off guard. Not even the clones or Kaminoans saw it coming. Nala Se even had to do some damage control before Order 66 when Clone Trooper Tup's chip malfunctioned and caused him to murder his Jedi general. Nala Se, who had experience working in clone medical facilities to treat the wounded, was assigned to Tup's case. Not only did she conceal the nature of Tup's chip malfunction, she was also able to convince the JAR that he had contracted some type of pathogen. Nala Se would also make sure that Tup's friend, Fives, was kept away from the secret of the inhibitor chips, and on Palpatine's orders, she manages to inject Fives with a neurotoxin, which makes him kind of lose control of his mental faculties, which causes him to attack Chancellor Palpatine. So Nala Se has shown herself to be an extremely competent individual who's also a very quick thinker. Most importantly, she's someone that the Sith can trust because she doesn't really have too many moral qualms. Her inside knowledge about the clones in Order 66 makes her someone that the Sith would want to continue keeping an eye on, and she's also proven to be very capable of keeping secrets and preventing leaks from happening. On top of her other desirable attributes, she's an extremely skilled geneticist and clone engineer, and therefore she's on a very short list of candidates of individuals who can actually help Darth Sidious achieve his ultimate goals. You see, for more than 1,000 years, the Sith had adopted the Rule of Two strategy, which means the Master will teach only one apprentice, and when the apprentice is strong enough, they will overcome and kill their Master, and so continues the cycle. It's kind of a really stupid strategy, and it was created because of one specific problem that the Sith seems to face a lot. See, whenever a large amount of Sith exists in the galaxy, they typically are very successful at destroying and conquering. But when there are no enemies left to fight, the Sith tend to self-destruct and fight amongst each other. Darth Plagueis, who was Darth Sidious's master, wanted to modify the Rule of Two by making both of them immortal. They could use their dark side powers to infinitely keep each other alive. But Darth Sidious, of course, had other plans and would murder Darth Plagueis in his sleep. His goal was to create a rule of one. He would of course still take on new apprentices and have Sith minions, but all the secrets and ultimate power would be held on by him. But in order to continue his reign, Palpatine actually had to figure out how to become immortal. For a Sith Lord, there's one major option to extend their life, and that is by removing their life essence from the vessel that is their body, and then transferring that essence to a host body. Some Sith in the past have possessed trinkets or even entire buildings. But the ultimate goal is to possess a living individual, preferably one with very strong force powers. But this of course was much harder to achieve, especially if the host had a strong mind. When Darth Bane, creator of the Rule of Two, was defeated by his own apprentice Darth Zana, he tried to use this technique to take over her body. But it was ultimately impossible unless Darth Zana would allow Darth Bane to do this. As a matter of fact, a weak, ordinary person without force sensitivity most likely would have been able to resist Darth Bane. What Darth Sidious realizes is he needs either a willing individual or probably just an empty vessel to occupy. One without much of a life or personality. What he needed was a clone. The problem is cloning force sensitivity into a body is almost impossible. It was sort of like the holy grail of cloning in Star Wars, and everyone from the Kaminoans to Thrawn to even Darth Vader attempted to create force sensitive clones. We know that Darth Sidious would eventually survive the destruction of the second Death Star by basically transferring his essence to a clone of his body on Exegol. This is a pretty complicated process to achieve, but even then Palpatine's new identical clone began to deteriorate very rapidly once he possessed it. This is most likely a side effect of Palpatine's close connection to the dark side. The Sith Eternal cult created this body using Clone Wars era technology. I believe that Nala Se was at least somehow involved in this program. Remember, the Imperial scientist she sees is wearing a very similar uniform to the scientist Pershing, who also specialized in clone engineering and was used to examine the child Go-Gurt. We also have to remember that Palpatine didn't just want exact copies of himself, he made a Strand-cast son out of his own DNA. Unfortunately, this son was not force sensitive, but he did eventually meet a woman and had a daughter named Rey, and that is what the sequels are basically about. I can say with a good amount of certainty that Nala Se most likely is involved in this very secret elite cloning program started by Darth Sidious, but let me know in the comment section below if you think I'm wrong. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below as well so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.